Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Kodanitai Maya Poshashi, Kodanitai Jaya Maya Poshashi. Jaya Maya Poshashi. ISKCON Guru Vrinda Ki Jaya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya, Shri Shri Kodanitai Maya Poshashi Ki Jaya. Reading from the Nectar of Devotion. So the section is spontaneous devotional service. Srila Goswami is trying here to describe the different achievements of the impersonalists and the personalists. Generally, those who are impersonalists and are inimical to the Supreme Personality of Godhead get entrance only into the impersonal Brahman when and if they reach spiritual perfection. The impersonalist philosophers are in one sense like the enemies of the Lord, because the out-and-out enemies of the Lord and the impersonalists are both allowed to enter only into the impersonal effulgence of the Brahmajyoti. So it is to be understood that they are similar in classification. And actually the impersonalists are enemies of God because they cannot tolerate the unparalleled opulence of the Lord. They try always to place themselves on the same level with the Lord. That is due to their envious attitude. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has proclaimed the impersonalists to be offenders of the Lord. The Lord is so kind, however, that even though they are all his enemies, they are still allowed to enter into the spiritual kingdom and remain in the impersonal Brahmajyoti, the undifferentiated light of the Absolute. Srila Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7. Oh, it's Bhishma Bhishmastami. This is the appearance anniversary of Bhishma Dev, the grandfather of Pandavas. Bhishma Dev was the son of Maharaj Shantanu and Ganga Devi. When his father later wanted to marry Satyavati, Bhishma Dev took a vow never to marry, so Satyavati's son could inherit his father's kingdom. He lived in the court of Dhritarashtra, so he felt obligated to take Duryodhana's side in the battle of Kurukshetra. He wanted to see Krishna fight, so he attacked Arjuna very ferociously. Krishna, despite his vow not to take up weapons in the battle, grabbed the wheel of a chariot and attacked Bhishma Dev, thus breaking his own promise to fulfill his devotee's desire. Bhishma Dev died on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He lay in a bed of arrows for months, and finally, after instructing Maharaj Yudhisthira on religious principles, he passed away at his own wish in the presence of Lord Krishna. Bhishma Dev is one of the 12 Mahajans, great religious authorities. Shri Bhishma Dev Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So it's text 16 of chapter 12, entitled The Perfect Society for Spiritual Classes, Canto 7. Evam Vidho Brahmachari. Evam Vidho Brahmachari. Vanaprasto Yatir Grihi. Vanaprasto Yatir Grihi. Charan Vidita Vijnana Charan Vidita Vijnana Param Shishiko Nitai Mai Poshashiki Jai Brahma Digachati Param Brahma Digachati Evam Vido Brahmachari Vanaprasto Yatir Grihi Charan Vidita Vijnana Param Brahma Digachati Evam Vido Brahmachari Vanaprasto Yatir Grihi Charan Vidita Vijnana Param Brahma Digachati Evam Vido Brahmachari Vanaprasto Yatir Grihi Charan Vidita Vijnana Achati Jananda Evam Vido Brahmachari Vanaprasto Yatir Grihi Charan Vidita Vijnana Brahman Brahma Digachati Evam Vida. In this way, Brahmachari, whether one is a Brahmachari, Vanaprastha, or one is in the Vanaprastha ashram, Yati, or in the Sannyas ashram, Grihi, or in the Grihastha ashram, Charan, by practice of self-realization and understanding of the absolute truth. Vidita Vijnana, fully conversant with the signs of the absolute truth. Param, the supreme. Brahma, the absolute truth. Adigachati, one can understand. Translation, by practicing in this way, whether one be in the Brahmachari ashram, Grihastha ashram, Vanaprastha ashram, or Sannyas ashram, one must always realize the all-pervading presence of the Supreme Lord, for in this way it is possible to understand the absolute truth. So it says, by practicing in this way, so in this way is referring to, one should realize that in fire, in the spiritual master, in oneself, and in all living entities, in all circumstances and conditions, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu has simultaneously entered and not entered. He is situated externally and internally as the full controller of everything. So that's the in this way that's being referred to kind of appreciate the all-pervading presence. So responsible, please. By practicing in this way, whether one be in the Brahmachari ashram, Grihastha ashram, Vanaprastha ashram, or Sannyas ashram, or fast asleep, one must realize the all-pervading presence of the Supreme Lord. For in this way, it is possible to understand the absolute truth. Srila Prabhupada's purport, Ki Jai. This is the beginning of self-realization. One must first understand how Brahman is present everywhere and how he is acting. This education is called Brahma Jigyasa and is the real concern of human life. Without such knowledge, one cannot claim to be a human being. Rather, he remains in the animal kingdom. As it is said, Sa eva gokara. Without such knowledge, one is no better than a cow or an ass. Om Jnana Timiranda Shagananjana Shalakaya Chaksharan Malitam Jaina Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhastam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swavadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gauda Bhattarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Srila Prabhupada is saying that self-realization begins by first of all becoming aware that the Brahman is present everywhere. And then after Brahmati, Paramatmati, Bhagavanati, Sabjate. So the Absolute is realized in 3 stages. The first stage is realizing that there's an all-pervasive spiritual energy, internally and externally, and although the Lord enters into it, at the same time he remains transcendental to it. And this education is Brahma Gigyasa, and it is the concern, the real concern of human life. Without such knowledge, one cannot claim to be a human being. Rather, he remains in the animal kingdom. As it is said, Sa eva gokara. Without such knowledge, one is no better than a cow or an ass. So the theme keeps coming through, how society is animalistic if we don't segregate the 2 sexes. And then along on that same theme now, in other words, by default, human society is no better than animal society, just another species of animals, unless you introduce this understanding of the Brahman, and then from there Paramatma, and then eventually Bhagavan. You have a question, Jananda? What are the 3 stages of understanding? Brahman and Bhagavan, they're the 3 stages. So it's saying here, first of all, we have to become aware of Brahman. Do we emphasize that, or do we say just try to learn Bhagavan? Do we say skip the other 2, Brahman and Paramatma? Are we encouraged to try and become aware of them, or are we being encouraged just to go directly to Bhagavan? What's that? So Jayananda Prabhu was saying that we're encouraged to understand a little bit about Brahman and Paramatma before we go directly to Bhagavan. What do you think?
What I remember is it says like if you go to Bhagavan, like you understand everything else, but at the same time, it's also the Bhagavad describes that to understand Brahman, it's like a first stage, like primary school, and then understanding Paramat is like a secondary school, and then understanding Bhagavan is like high school or university, right? So it's like we should answer what are these, but we shouldn't we should aim for Bhagavan, right? Because yeah.
So 2 advocates of Brahman, Paramatma, and then Bhagavan.
Hare Krishna, bro. We are definitely not this encourage or to skip Brahman and Paramatma. But like Prabhupada, if we understand, as Renas is saying, like Bhagwan, then we'll understand Paramatma and Brahman as well. Or if someone gradually as well understands Brahman and Paramatma, but ultimately coming to the point of realization that Krishna to Bhagwan Swayam, or even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Aham Brahmano Paratisto, that this Brahman is residing in me only, and I'm the source.
Yeah, the subject came up last night in Shuddhavati Chintamani as we can take the indirect path to Krishna, which is a longer path and which seems easier, or we can take the direct path, which is that we immediately take up chanting holy names without offense and engaging in full-time distribution and glorification of Krishna. That's the direct path. So so it is being said here in the purport that one must first understand how Brahman is present everywhere and how he is acting. So if a devotee steps forward to take initiation, there's 5 principles that are considered important for devotional service, living in the holy place, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting Hare Krishna, worshipping the deity, and is it taking initiation?
I think it's a fifth, then it's reading Krishna.
Association of devotees. And I was just listening, there's 64 items that are also explained in devotional service. And then the most important of those is approaching a spiritual master, taking initiation from him, following his instructions. So one may start off on the path, and his first qualification is he's trying to understand Brahman. And then the next stage from that would be to find somebody that already is aware of Brahman and to take shelter of him. So then there's Paramatma is considered to be like the mystic yogi becomes aware of the Paramatma. And the danger is that he identifies with the Paramatma as himself. And then ultimately, Mahatma Sudalabha, it's very rare that a person, Vasudeva Sarvam Iti, one who actually realizes Mahatmanas tu Mampata, out of many great people, one who has realized that Vasudeva is the all in all. So that would indicate that if you come to the stage of realizing there's Brahman or realizing the stage of Paramatma, the problem is you may stop at that stage and think, okay, I've reached the stage. But to understand that Vasudeva is everything. So we were reading in Shrudavati Chintamani last night that the prerequisites for pure devotional service are not knowledge and renunciation. They may come or they may not come. But the main qualification for pure devotion is pure faith. So if you have that pure faith that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then you bypass the Brahman and the Paramatma stage, and you're immediately able to render pure devotional service. And even if that devotee with pure faith sometimes falls down due to the strong influence of the energy, he's still considered saintly. He's still considered a pure devotee. Apichat Sudaracharo. So the important thing isn't to become distracted by how aware I am of Brahman or Paramatma, but to invest everything in becoming more and more faithful that the Supreme Person is Krishna, and that my ultimate benefit and good, my ultimate perfection, sadhya, is to become a pure devotee of him. And if that's firmly established and embedded in the heart, then it means we can render pure devotional service. Even though we may be a very immature stage, we may see a Mayavadi sannyasi, and he can fast for 40 days and stand on his big toe for 3 weeks, and he's never looked at a woman in his entire life. But the bhakta that's starting out with that pure faith is more advanced. Any questions or comments? Also, Shiva Rama says, guard your pure faith. The pure faith that you're getting in Krishna is coming from Prabhupada. So if you have pure faith in Prabhupada, then you get pure faith in Krishna. If something waters down your pure faith in Prabhupada, then that can also threaten your pure faith in Krishna, because it's Prabhupada that gave us Krishna. Prabhupada said, chant Hare Krishna. And we said, okay. And we started chanting Hare Krishna, because we had faith that that's what we're supposed to do, because of Prabhupada. And we heard the Maha Mantra from Prabhupada. So that's where our pure faith is coming from. He's giving us that seed of pure faith. And by reading his books and following in his society and cooperating. And we were also reading last night that if we want to cooperate nicely, then there needs to be respect and there needs to be appreciation. We have to develop the ability to do that, to respect and appreciate everybody. Instead of looking for respect and appreciation, we should just be showing respect and appreciation. And if we're only going to show respect and appreciation if we first of all receive it, then that means we're vulnerable to the environment, Whereas if we've decided we're going to show appreciation and respect, irrespective of the environment, then we've become proactive in our Krishna consciousness. But to do that means you have to have control of yourself, and you have to have discipline and deep understanding. Otherwise, you can't override the external circumstances to apply your principles. You're only going to be respectful and appreciative if it's like this and if it's like that, which means it's conditional. And we want to become aheta kapatiyata. We want to be unconditional. If it's unconditional, then it can be uninterrupted, because what interrupts it is the conditions. I was prepared to do this under these conditions. However, these conditions are no longer here, so therefore now I must discontinue. So then, if it's motivated, then it'll also be interrupted. Unmotivated, then nothing can interrupt. Irrespective of facility or lack of facility, we have that firm resolve that this is what I should do. Like the Titanic, when the Titanic was sinking, there was these guys that were in a band, and they were playing their instruments, and the Titanic was going down. And because there wasn't enough lifeboats for everyone, and because they felt they were like part of the staff, they felt that the guests should get the first. You wouldn't see that now, but at least in then anyway, there was some level of integrity. So they were just playing the instruments as they were going under the water, and the water was ice cold, so very quickly they just died, from exposure. So if we're like that, we're prepared to keep singing Hare Krishna to the bitter end. So, the real concern is Brahma Jigyasa. And if it's not there, the real concern of human life. So if human life is not concerned with Brahma Jigyasa, then it reverts back to animal kingdom. And so if we are in a society of animals, then the laws of nature, at the time of death, our consciousness shows that we are suitable to go into the body of an animal, so we lose the human form of life. Trayate mahato bayat is the most dangerous type of fear, because then we go into complete darkness, complete ignorance. Now we have some glimmer that there is God and that He's present everywhere, and we're trying to develop that. The direct perception of the self is the perfection of religion. So whatever religion you're following, if the practitioners are at least aware of the self, of the Brahman, then at least they're on one step toward a genuine spiritual life. But if their religion doesn't bring them to that point, then the Dharma is of no use. It's the king of knowledge. And because it gives direct experience of the self by perception, here's the perfection of religion, here's everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. So once we become aware that we are Brahman and that we're eternal, then immediately we become joyful. That shadow of impending death is no longer cast over us. We're aware that we've always existed and we always will exist, which is a joyful realization. And how can people really be happy unless they're aware that they always exist? Everything they have is false, shallow, and temporary. Like people running around, and you say, "Oh, you seem really excited." Yeah, because when I go home tonight, somebody's going to put £1 million in my hands for 3 seconds, and I'm so excited. But what happens after 3 seconds? Well, then they take it back and slap me in the face. Okay. So what's the point then? It's whether it's 3 seconds or 30 years, it gets taken back and you get slapped in the face. What's the point? How can you could only if you were a fool would you be happy with that, especially if you see other people getting their faces slapped and getting the money taken back off them. Oh, well, maybe it will be taken away eventually, but at least I'll have some nice memories of when I had happy times. So then all they have is mental impressions. And you can control your mental impressions. You can have mental impressions about Krishna rather than memories of sense gratification. If you have a mental impression about sense gratification and you think back, it just makes you lament. It doesn't make you think, oh, I was so happy when I had that £3 million. It just makes you lament. Any questions or comments? So, beginning of self-realization. And also it's the beginning of self-realization, it's not the end of self-realization. So, okay, maybe you've come with some understanding of Brahman, but you need to move on from there very quickly. Otherwise, the danger could be that you you just become satisfied with being aware that you're Brahman, and you just leave it at that. So, is it possible for somebody that's realized to some degree Krishna to revert back to becoming like an animal again? Anyone know a story that illustrates how you can be very close to Krishna and then you can end up becoming an animal? Know that one, Jananda? Don't call me expensive, just call me dear. You know that story? Bharat Maharaj. He was very close. And just due to a little inattention, he became an animal. So we are saved from the most dangerous type of fear, but we have to all the time be very careful. At any moment we could become distracted off the path. Because he was so elevated, then even though he was a deer, he wasn't like a normal deer. He was like a human deer. But then he was careful, and then he took Bhattacharya Bharat, and then he was still really, really careful. Otherwise, sa eva gokara. Without knowledge, without this knowledge, one is no better than a cow or an ass. And most people don't really have that knowledge. And we have that knowledge to some degree, but we have to become firmly established so that we don't become swayed off the path. So it's saying this chapter is the perfect society for spiritual classes. So that's kind of the onus is on us as practitioners of spiritual life. Can we display the perfect society? That's what Prabhupada wants. He wants us to establish Varnashram, Daivi Varnashram. What's the difference between Varnashram and Daivi Varnashram? Yeah, spiritual. And what would be the difference if you have a Shudra in the Daivi Varnashram? How is he different from a Shudra in the mundane Varnashram?
He won't be complaining.
He won't be asleep. Any other distinctions between normal Varnashram and Daivi Varnashram?
I suppose in both of them there will be good harmony and good synergy. But in Devi Varnashram, there will be good harmony and synergy towards God and towards spiritual fulfillment altogether. And in standard Varnashrama, there will be harmony and synergy, but more for getting material benefits.
Would it be fair to say that there may be a less chance of a Shudra going back to Godhead in that lifetime if he's not in Daivi Varnashram?
It's fair to say, very fair to say.
So it's a slower process. And there's not so much pure faith being instilled in the practitioners. There's a story actually in that book by Maharaj. He did that book, Dirashanta Maharaj, yeah. And there's a story in there, and this man, you can see this man, and he's chipping away at stones. And he goes, "What are you doing? What's this for?" And he says, "I don't know. I'm just, I just know I need to chip these blocks 9 hours a day if I'm going to get the money to survive, to look after my wife and children." And he says, "I don't know what it's for, and I don't care. I just need the money." And then he goes to the next man. He goes, and he's chipping away as well. And he says, "What are the blocks for?" And he says, "I think it's for a temple. I'm not really sure, but I'm just doing my job." And then he goes to this next man. He looks really, really happy, and he's chipping away. And he says, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, this is going to be the most beautiful temple. I've seen the plans for it, and 2 years from now, there'll be so many people coming to the temple, and they'll be so ecstatic. And I'm so happy to be doing it that although I'm only supposed to work 9 hours, I work later, and I don't even get paid. But I'm just so excited to see this taking place. I want it to happen as quickly as I can." So all three of them are chipping away at blocks, but they're all in different consciousness. So in the same way, Varnashram, they're doing their duties. Daivi Varnashram, they're doing their duties in a very joyful way because they want to do everything to please Krishna. So the quality of work, although the work itself is the same, the quality of work differs according to the intention and the consciousness behind the person working. And obviously, if the person has a lot of knowledge and a lot of vision and sees the potential of what's going on, then that quality of work is much higher. Consciousness is much higher, So whatever it is we're doing, if we put our consciousness into it, that I'm doing this for Krishna, the Supreme Person. This is all his energy. It's got nothing to do with what I want. It's just whatever Krishna wants. In the Gita, Tesh, you have a right. You have a right to perform your duty. What's that verse? You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruit. Come on, ye body kadas te mafale shukadachina maka mafale hito masi sangash vakamali. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruit activities. Never be attached to not doing your duty, and never consider yourself the cause of your activity. Because it's your duty, and you're not attached to the results. You're just doing it because this is what you're supposed to do. Because Arjuna didn't want the kingdom. He didn't want. He wasn't there, even though he could have said, "I'm going to take revenge." He wasn't even there for that. He was there just because Krishna wanted him to be, and he did it for that reason. Any other questions or comments? One must first understand how Brahman is present everywhere and how he is acting So, because I'm going to find it difficult today to just think of Krishna all day. So the initial challenge is, can you understand that the Brahman is present everywhere and how it's acting? So that could be the exercise, the rudimentary exercise. Okay, can you just appreciate that everything that's moving here is moving because of the touch of the spiritual energy? The material world is dead and inert. The material nature is inferior. And it's only when it's touched by the superior nature that anything moves, or anything looks alive. Like a flag. The flag is flapping in the wind. But if there's no wind, then the flag just hangs. In the same way, the body flaps for some years because of the movement of the consciousness. The consciousness goes away, and the body just drops down and doesn't flap anymore. The flapping body. And people are running around and they don't realize that they're trying to function as if everything's eternal. That's how they're functioning. And then when the reality hits them that everything's temporary, that's when they get really depressed. Or those who are around them die, or those things that they've accumulated are taken away, then they become really depressed. And that's just the material world, you know. And knowledge is seeing the distinction between what is temporary, and there's no endurance, and what is eternal, there is no change. Shishikoli Thai Maipa Shashiki Jai. So they're the two energies that we're in contact with. The dead material energy and the living spiritual force. And they're all mixed up together. Matter together, mix it together, and automatically the living force will come out. And then the challenge is, okay, if that's the case, I'll give you a dead body. He's only just died 5 seconds ago. So it's practically everything's there. You just need to add the magic ingredient, whatever it is, that's just gone, you know. If his heart's just gone, just put a new one in. Or whatever it is, give him a new head. Everything should be okay now. If it's just material energy, then that should be just what you do, right? Like Frankenstein. Just have to get all the parts together. And then
So like Kumbh Mela is going on in India, so many sadhus visiting there, and ISKCON devotees are also there, and they have their pandal and distributing prasadam, kirtan and books as well. Now, it's such a fantastic environment, practicing Krishna consciousness, chanting, dancing, feasting, such a happy, joyous thing. And these sadhus we see like they are so long hair and tough life, tough practice so much. What is it that attracts them and then keeps them going as well? Why cannot they see that, okay, look at them, these are distributing scriptures as well, they study scriptures, they quote as well, and they are so happy as well, and they are talking about God and everything like at the platform of
but all of them that come in contact will be affected to one degree or another, even though it may not eventually manifest there and then. And the living entity is on his own journey, so Krishna accompanies. And if the living entity has faith in the demigods, then he strengthens that faith. If they have faith in mystic yoga, then he strengthens that faith. And if they want to be his devotees, then he strengthens that faith. So he's reciprocating with the desire of the living entity as well. So what is the desire? And that's why we can sometimes forget how significant it is that we do have a desire to want to go back to Krishna, to want to engage in eternal living pastimes with him. It's very special. Whether you got that desire because Srila Prabhupada inspired it within you, or you've got that desire because you had it from a past lifetime. If you have that desire, it's very special. It's a very special thing. And somebody else is there, and they're doing all their austerities, and you're thinking, why are you making it so difficult for yourself? Why don't you just do this? But the fact is, they just don't have that faith. And that is such a valuable commodity, to have that faith, that pure faith. That this is it. Krishna is the absolute truth. I'm his part and parcel. The ultimate goal is to be reunited with him. And by doing that, we circumvent all these He prayed, please save me, God. And then the helicopter came. And they said, grab hold of the ladder, And he goes, no, I'm praying to God. He's going to come and save me. So the helicopter flew away. And he was praying again. And then a little lifeboat came out and said, jump into the dinghy. And he said, no, it's okay. I'm waiting for God. And then eventually a submarine came along and came up out of the water and said, just jump into the submarine. And he said, no, I'm waiting for God. And then he died. And then when he went back, he said to God, why didn't you save me? I was praying like anything. And God said, well, I tried 3 times and then I just gave up. So if a person's fixed on his idea of what he thinks perfection is, even though he's getting the book and he's getting the prasadam and Krishna's really trying to, he's not able to appreciate that, to see that. Because he's so fixed on his idea, his preconceived idea of what it should be. And so, Vasudeva Savam Iti. Now, if you take all these people that want to practice, they have some inclination towards spiritual life and they take up their austerities and their penances. Whereas if you go out into the broad field of people who are just sense enjoyers, because they haven't got any preconceived idea of what perfection is, if you give them a book in prasadam, immediately they're like, oh, okay, Krishna, he's the supreme person. Okay, I can get on board with that, and I just have to chant. Okay, I'll try that. And suddenly they're able to take it up, Whereas if they had been sitting in a Himalayan cave for the last 300 years, they've invested so much in that to just say, oh yeah, you're probably right, and have to So because of that, we can reflect on how fortunate we are that for whatever reason, we've stumbled across this great opportunity, this golden opportunity. And we just have to hold on to it now with pure faith. The pure faith that enabled us to first take it up is the pure faith that we need to hold on. At any minute you can let go. Like they have these guys, right? They do the water skiing. So as long as they hold on, they stay above the water, and they're getting pulled along. As soon as they let go, they sink. So Krishna consciousness is like that. You're throwing it, you grab it. As soon as you grab it, you start getting pulled along, and you transcend. You come out of the modes of nature. You let go, blah, 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 down you go. So you have to hold on. Once you've got it, you have to hold on. You can't relax, otherwise you'll just sink back under the influence. And you'll fall asleep. Heaven forbid. Any last questions or comments?
Bharat Maharaj performed such good austerity, everything. He left kingdom and all, and then got attached to deer. But how come he did not get a next life as a human then? Because like someone may say, oh, Bhagavad Gita says that he has taken prasadam, chanted, and also next life is definitely guaranteed human life. But Bharat Maharaj did not get a human life.
Well, it wasn't a normal birth as a deer. It was a deer with human consciousness, which is not the same as Trayati Mahatobha. The greatest fear is to lose the consciousness of a human being. So he lost the form of a human being, but he didn't lose the consciousness of a human being. And because he was very elevated, then Krishna wanted to use him in a particular way to illustrate a particular thing. To display a principle, like with Arjuna, he began to lament, and it would seem, according to the Kshatriya code, that he'd become a coward, and at least that's the way that they would see it. And yet Arjuna was so elevated; he was such a capable warrior, and he became overwhelmed with this compassion. I was just listening this morning, actually, Srila Prabhupada giving a Bhagavad Gita class, and he says Arjuna thought that Krishna would be pleased with him when he said, "Oh, I'm feeling compassionate," and Krishna wasn't impressed at all, you know. So when you're very intimately Maharaj, the message was be very, very careful on the spiritual path. And even something as innocent as a deer, it may seem, they say the path to hell is paved with good intentions. So it was a good intention. I just, this poor little defenseless deer, it's happened right in front of me, so therefore I should do something. I shouldn't just ignore it. If you ignored it, then the deer would have just drowned, and that would have been the end of the story. So he had compassion, just like Arjuna had compassion. But Krishna wanted to use that in a certain way to illustrate something. In the case of Bharat Maharaj, to illustrate how careful we have to be, even though we can become so advanced spiritually. So when you're in a pastime with Krishna, it's not that we're just all there, we're going to have a picnic now and everything's great. Krishna's got so many reasons why that pastime has to take place, and why there's a certain sequence of events. There's so much knowledge and example, and he'll use his pure devotees to display characteristics that will be edifying for the general populace to hear, when we hear these pastimes, these activities of these great souls. And how, although they were diverted off the path, they still retain their memory, their consciousness of Krishna, and eventually they achieve perfection. So we shouldn't become discouraged. Whatever weird and wonderful things are put before us in the material world, we should understand that this is part of the course, so that we don't become comfortable or complacent. Utsamai, that's when you start. Well, there's false confidence, and then there's Tarangaranjani, which is when you become, you start enjoying the facilities of devotional service, and you become all of you, Ki Jai.